Well, I was on a farm, and I had a good life. I went through high school, thanks to the girls.
And why did you decide to join the military?
I kind of had my eye on the Navy, but my sister come through after graduating from high school, and he was in the Navy. And so that's how I got in the Navy in Baltimore, Maryland.
How old were you when you signed up?
18.
And what year was that?
19. I was born in 20, so it must have been 1938, huh? Yeah, I guess so.
It was before the war started, though.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so, where were you? What were you assigned to do in the Navy?
What was I assigned to do?
Right.
I went aboard the USS Whitney, a destroyer tender here in San Diego.
Okay.
And I had a aunt here who had a cousin, my daughter my age. She furnished me with the girls.
Okay. Now the Whitney was at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, yes, it had gone out to Pearl Harbor, a year before the attack, I guess.
Okay.
Yes, when they moved the fleet out there.
Okay. And what do you remember? What do you remember before the attack? Had you had any kind of inkling that something like that might happen?
No, not at all. And I was just like the rest of the country. Nobody would attack us. It was big and strong and too confident.
Okay. And what do you remember that morning, December 7th?
Well, I was standing on the rail of the ship and I seen a plane go across the stern of the Whitney, and I run back there and it winged up and I saw the rising sun and knew the Japanese were attacking. And it dropped its torpedo then.
Now, was your ship attacked?
No, they were after the battleships.
Okay. And what kind of things did you see happen to the battleships near you?
What things I see happening?
Yes.
Well, one thing, there was quite a few bodies in the water on the way over to the West Virginia, and they were picking them up, and we went over there and they put me to on a fire hose, keeping the fire from the Arizona from engulfing the West Virginia. There's a famous picture of 5 fire hoses going off the West Virginia, and I'm on one of those.
Are you? Okay. Is that duty that you volunteered for?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you volunteer for it?
Well, I was a firefighter aboard the Whitney, and so they asked for volunteers, so I volunteered, yes.
Okay. And when you were doing that, when you were doing the fire hose, what were you thinking? What was going through your mind as all this was going on?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. I wasn't scared. I remember that because a lot of the older guys were scared. But war's a young man's game. I wasn't scared.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. You thought it was kind of exciting, maybe, huh?
What?
It was a little bit exciting then.
That's right. It's exciting to a young guy.
Okay.
To an older guy, it's scary.
Okay. So, the Whitney, did you stay at Pearl Harbor much longer after the attack?
No, not but 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
Then we went down to South Pacific.
Okay.
Tonga Taboo first, and then New Caledonia.
Okay. And what kinds of things were you doing down there?
Taking care of destroyers.
Okay.
We carried their ammunition and we could fuel them too and do repairs on them.
Okay. And did you see any combat down there?
No, none. The Japanese threw some torpedoes over the reef into the harbor.
Okay.
But they didn't. They hit an ammunition ship, but it didn't blow up.
Okay. Okay. So your ship was never attacked by kamikaze planes or anything
No,
like that?
no.
Okay.
I was on a 20 millimeter gun after Pearl Harbor. Before Pearl Harbor, we didn't have any guns for low-flying planes. And after Pearl Harbor, they put 20 millimeters and 40 millimeters guns aboard.
Okay.
And on the crates was U.S. Majesty ship so-and-so and so-and-so. Evidently, they was headed for the English fleet, and they laid them and give them to us.
What do you most remember about Pearl Harbor?
Well, I don't know. It was over so fast as far as the attack was concerned, but the damage was pretty sad.
Right. What do you remember about how it made you feel in terms of about the war then at that point, in terms of wanting to fight the war?
Well, they tried to make us hate the Japanese, of course.
Right.
But you know, that's one thing. Another thing I remember. After the war, I spent time in Japan, and there was never a nicer bunch of people than the Japanese.
Okay.
Believe me, war is our leaders get us into wars, not the people.
Okay. Now, on board the Whitney, what were your duties on the Whitney?
Making molds for castings. Like if a pump went out, we made a new casting, or a impeller and stuff like that. And propellers too. We made a few of those.
Right.
We can make most anything in there.
Right. Now, you were telling me earlier when you first went into the military, a lot of people were scared, but you weren't.
No, I wasn't scared.
Yeah, you were. You told me something about when why you couldn't sleep the first night you were there.
Well, yeah, because of thinking of all the underwear, clean underwear I had in my locker.
You've never had that many clothes in your life.
No, I never had that much underwear before.
Now, when you were on board the Whitney, one of your assignments was to do the stars for someone. Tell
Yes.
me that story.
When Admiral Halsey made Admiral, we made his stars in the foundry with a lost wax method.
Okay.
And we made his first stars.
Okay. Explain to me what the lost wax method is.
What?
Explain to me what the lost wax method is.
Well, you make the pattern out of wax and put it in the mold, and then you heat the mold, and the wax melts and leaves a cavity, and you pour the metal in there.
Okay. And what did you use for metal to make the Admiral's stars?
Quarters and $half, silver quarters and $half.
So you and the others were just pulling that out of your pockets, huh? And put it in.
That's right.
Okay.
The officers sent down a bunch of silver that they wanted to use, but we used our own.
Okay. And what did you think of Admiral Halsey?
What?
What did you think of Admiral Halsey as a leader?
Admiral Halsey was a great admiral. Gormley, I won't say much about him.
Okay.
But Admiral Halsey was a gung-ho guy. He believed in getting in there and getting the job done.
Okay. Okay. Now, later in the war, you switched ships?
Yes, I switched to the Ajax. When I put the Ajax in commission and joined the fleet that went across the Central Pacific that defeated Japan.
Well,
Japan was defeated before the atomic bomb was dropped, believe me.
you think they were frightened off by the size of that fleet coming their way?
Yeah, because that was a big fleet that went across the Central Pacific.
How big was it?
Well, and we was anchored in Ulysses at one time, and there was 1,000 ships in there, including LSIs and LSTs. And that harbor was so big that some of the ships, you could just see the masts over the horizon.
Now, what kind of a ship was the Ajax?
It was a repair ship.
Okay.
It's kind of the same job as the Whitney, but for all ships rather than just destroyers.
Right, right. Well, lots of times in the history of the war, we hear about the destroyers and the carriers, but these other ships like you were on pretty important to the war effort, weren't they?
Oh yes, like we set up bases in the South Pacific. If it wasn't for destroyer tenders and the repair ships and things like that, we wouldn't have had a base out there. In fact, the Japanese kind of overlooked something in Pearl Harbor, because here we had 5 destroyers alongside, and so did the Dobbin, which was another destroyer tender, and a bomb would have done a lot of damage there.
Okay.
So I've drawn a lot of pension checks.
So you were in the Navy for how long altogether?
20 years.
Oh, 20 years.
Yeah, 19 years, 6 months, and 26 days.
Okay. So what did you do in the Navy after the war?
Mostly personnel, an awful lot, because I made chief in 4 years and 4 months, and so I spent about 16 years in the Navy as a chief, and so probably the last 10 of it was in personnel.
Okay. And were you based in San Diego most of the time?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay.
I had 4 years of recruiting duty though in Terre Haute, Indiana,
Oh.
and that was a real nice deal,
Okay.
just like being a civilian.
Yeah. Well, tell me how you think your war experience shaped you as a person.
I think it's the same as what it did with the in the nation. I think it pulled us together. I think we was more together after the war than we was before the war. We seem to have more of a purpose in life. But when I went in the Navy, believe me, it was family. I mean, it was not only good food, but I mean, everybody looked out after everybody else. It was family.
How much did you weigh when you went into the military?
136 pounds.
And how much did you weigh after a year?
190. 185, I guess.
You liked the food?
Oh, yeah. The seconds were good.
Well, what are you most proud of about your war experience?
I think volunteering to fight fire on the West Virginia.
Yeah.
And I think that, yes.
So the fear was that the fire in the Arizona would spread to the West Virginia?
Yes. The oil from the Arizona was on fire, and it was trying to engulf the stern of the West Virginia.
Okay.
And we was fighting that oil fires back. And I looked into that fire so much that day, the next day my face was sore and red, and they put calamine lotion all over my face
Because you were taking the heat.
from looking in the fire all day long.
How long were you on that hose? How long were you standing there with that hose?
From about 8 o'clock until I think 3:30 or 4. The tide turned late in the afternoon, and it kind of pulled the water away from the West Virginia.
Okay. And when you were over on the West Virginia, was the attack over by then? Were there any?
Yes.
Okay.
But it had taken a couple of torpedoes and was sitting on the bottom of the bay. The West Virginia was.
Okay.
It had one torpedo in it that didn't go off.
Oh, in the ship?
In the West Virginia.
Yeah.
What it did, the torpedo went in a hole that another torpedo had caused, and so that torpedo didn't go off. The second one that went in there.
Okay. Well, I'm curious about sort of the aftermath of the attack and what it was like to be at Pearl Harbor, having seen what had happened to all those ships there.
It was kind of sad, but I was a gung-ho sailor, and nothing is going to stop us.
Okay.
We wasn't scared. They showed us pictures of Japanese warplanes, identification pictures before the war,
Okay.
and we laughed because it's old twin-wing planes, and we laughed at them. Believe me, that isn't the ones that come into Pearl Harbor. They were pretty old planes that they were showing us.
So you saw those old planes and thought there's no way they were going to attack anybody with those, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Figured them people can't attack us with those planes.
Right. But then when you saw that one with the red star, with the red sun on it,
A red sun, yeah.
That must have been quite.
Oh, then yeah, that was a slick-looking plane.
Yeah, it's been kind of stunning to all of a sudden see that.
Huh?
Must have been pretty stunning to all of a sudden see that with the sun on it.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Did you see other planes that morning?
Oh, yes. I saw quite a few planes flying around.
Now, from where you were on your ship, could you see some of the other ships get hit? I'm trying to get some sense of how close your ship was to.
I saw that. I saw the one that went into the. We had a target ship over there that they thought was tied up where the carriers normally tied up,
Right.
and I saw a torpedo go into it,
Okay.
and then it rolled over.
So when you were saying earlier, you guys couldn't scramble any guns because you didn't have any guns on your.
What?
You couldn't scramble the guns on your ship because you didn't have any then.
No, we had the only anti-aircraft guns we had on the ship was a 3-inch, but they were for higher flying planes, and all the planes were down low, so we didn't have any guns to fire on those low-flying planes.
Okay. Okay. What do you think the lessons are? Are there still lessons from Pearl Harbor for us today?
Well, I think we got to beware, but I don't think we have much to worry about. I think it kind of settled things. It settled what the World War I started. It kind of settled down, and I don't think people were afraid after that. The world's pretty stable. You know, it's the leaders that cause the wars, not the people.
Okay. Okay, well, is there anything else you want to share with us today? Anything else you wanted to talk about when you were coming today?
No, except how good the Navy was for me. It was a home. I never had it so good.
Okay.
$21 a month and 3 meals a day.